Hello and welcome to Bossing English with Mr. F. This is a 5 minutes, 5 features on London, AQA Power and Conflict poem. All right, London is in the Songs of Innocence and Experience. That's the collection, 1794. The collection's title suggests a dichotomy between these two states of being, innocence and experience, or we could think of them as states of mind. London, however, the title is very specific. Blake situates his socio-political critique in time and space. This is the London he knows. This was written after 1789, which is the French Revolution, so it's filled with radical post-revolutionary politics, the radical ideas that swept through Europe following the French Revolution and subsequent terror, where lots of aristocrats were massacred by Robespierre et al. And these ideas were disseminated throughout Europe, including London, with people being pro and people being against, and obviously lots of governments worried that something similar would happen on their territory. Blake was influenced by this, and maybe we could think that he was emboldened by this to write this. There are two versions of this. The first draft from 1792, in the opening stanza, instead of having the word chartered, I wander through each chartered street near where the chartered Thames does flow, has the word dirty, so dirty street and dirty Thames, suggesting that this is more of an environmental critique, or a critique, you might think of that as eco-criticism, about the state of the city he lives in and the pollution, kind of the emerging industrial revolution was just kicking off, and the impacts of that. So in the later version from 1794, the word dirty is replaced by the word chartered, chartered street, chartered Thames. Chartering was an 18th century process of corporate ownership, effectively transferring public land to private hands. So here a natural resource, the Thames, which is supposed to flow, is being restricted. So it seems to be a more overtly political comment being made here by Blake. Blake was an artist, an illustrator, and the manuscript for Songs of Innocence and Experience contains illustrations to many of the poems, including London. Here we can see an elderly figure leaning on a crutch being guided by a young child, maybe symbolic of experience, the old man and innocence, and maybe even we're watching innocence being corrupted into a kind of early experience before his time through the poverty of London. Or perhaps both are victims of power. Further down, we can see someone warming their hands on a fire, also suggestive of poverty, and lots of smoke and maybe soot-filled clouds, which could link to the pollution. And if we think of every blackening church as a literal blackening of the church on its walls, this could be being illustrated there. Okay, let's look at some structural features. It's written in the first person. We get one I at the very start. So we have a speaker persona. Can we link this to Blake, given the topic? It's London, where he lived and worked, and the radical political themes, which we knew he was in favour of. It certainly links to Shelley's radical politics from Ozymandias. That's the same post-French revolutionary epoch. We'll talk a bit more about that later. The poem itself has a song-like A-B structure. Maybe we could think of this as the first protest song, followed on from the Bob Dylans that we have still around today. In the second stanza, it's a quatrain made up of 4 lines. We have anaphora, that's the repetition of phrases at the start of every line, in every. Perhaps this is reinforcing the totality of the problems of poverty and corruption that is happening in London. At the end here, we have the word hear, the mind-forged manacles I hear. What we notice is there's a kind of juxtaposition of this hearing with an acrostic in the third stanza, and we get some different sounds accompanying that, as well as a list of societal ills. The chimney sweeper's cry, the blackening church appalls. Blackening here could be corruption of the ideals of the church, but also a literal blackening of the walls through pollution. The hapless soldier's sigh runs in blood down palace walls, a link there to the French Revolution of 1789. But most through midnight, so that's that. It closes with a crescendo. So that list of chimney sweeper, church, hapless soldier ends with "but most," the superlative there suggesting that this is the killer image. It's a very pessimistic image of young suffering, where man, woman, and child are affected. The man being in the marriage hearse, the child all through the youthful harlot's curse. We'll talk about that more in a minute. Okay, looking at some language features, a really obvious good one to go at would be mind-forged manacles. So manacles here suggestive of social constraints, kind of where people are restricting themselves, maybe based on their limited education or as a victim of poverty. Could also link to abuse of power, and certainly has connotations of slavery, because manacles, the physical manacle, would have been worn by slaves at the time. Mind forged suggests that these are constructs of the society people are growing up in. And there's a link here to a later poem called Jerusalem, in which Blake talks about black satanic mills, and again that could also link to the blackening church. We get some emotive appeals. Imagery of infancy of crying are used twice. There's some alliteration and violent language, blasts and blights, which also has connotations of corruption, and some biblical language with the word plague there. Finally, we get the oxymoron marriage hearse. So instead of giving rise to happiness and life, marriage results in death through sexually transmitted disease. This is the harlot's curse. That's all for now. Smash that like button, do something appropriate to the subscribe button, and I'll be back more very shortly. Bye for now.